Well, hello. Welcome to the Creative Writing Life podcast, where we talk with writers from all mediums and genres about themselves, their work, and advice they have for writers. I'm your host, Paul Zeidman, and my guest today is screenwriter extraordinaire and savvy industry expert and veteran, David Silverman. David, welcome to the Creative Writing Life podcast.
Hello there. Yeah, great to be here finally.
Oh, I am thrilled to have you here. I've known David for quite a while via social media, and we're going to be talking about his book, How to Be a Rockstar Screenwriter, or at least Pay the Bills. And quick setup, David sent me the PDF of the book, so he's got the hard copy today. So
Right, right.
occasionally he will be holding it up just like that, so you know what it looks like. Perfect. There you go. How to Be a Rockstar Screenwriter.
And then,
But we'll get into that in just a minute. So, David, for those who are familiar with the podcast, we like to start things off talking about things we may have read or watched lately. If we liked it, we didn't like it, never want to have anything to do with it again. I'll go first just to give you a little time to
sure,
collect your
sure.
thoughts.
Yeah, whatever.
So, over the weekend, my wife and I watched Jurassic Park Rebirth, which is the one from this past summer with Scarlett Johansson. And
Yeah,
it was okay. I mean, it's always fun to watch people, running from dinosaurs, but it just felt a little, I don't know, tired. And I think David Koepp, who I think also wrote the original one, possibly the second one, he was the screenwriter of this one, and it was definitely, I don't want to call it formulaic, but it just felt very by the numbers almost. But it still had its moments. But I'm glad I watched it at home rather than having
right.
gone
Yeah.
to the theater. And so there's a podcast that I've been enjoying for a good number of years. It's called Star Wars Minute, and we're the two hosts. They break down the Star Wars minutes or Star Wars movies 1 minute at a time, and they've done all of them. And so what they did, I think it was earlier this year or late last year, they had a script reading of the original draft of Star Wars, so it's a little different than what you remember from the movie. And with all these well-known people in the parts, it was just a lot of fun, and it's very no frills budget. Just a lot of fun. It's all on YouTube. You can just look it up. I think Star Wars Live Read is what it's called, something like that, or Script Read. And I think they've done all six. They've done the prequels and the original. I think they're about to move into the new trilogy as well. So, we'll start working my way through the prequels as well. But it was a lot of fun. So that's it for my end. David, what about you? Anything on the reading or watching front?
Yeah, so I see. I actually went to the movie theater a couple times, and I saw a movie with Keanu Reeves called Good Fortune, I think it was called. It was written by Aziz Ansari, and who stars in it. And it's like a retelling of It's a Wonderful Life.
Oh, okay.
Very clever, very it had a kind of nice warm vibe to it. It was really fun to watch. It was a comedy. So I recommend that. And I saw the other movie I saw in the theater was Leonardo's new movie, One Battle After Another by Paul Thomas Anderson, which was impressive. It's not for everybody, certainly.
Hmm.
It's I didn't get. Have you seen it?
I have seen it. I was going to say it's definitely not for everybody. I think when I first saw it, I really enjoyed it, but as time has gone on since then, it's still impressive. But because I remember thinking, I think there was a lot of buzz when it initially opened that, oh, this is going to like dominate the Oscars, and I'm like,
Yeah, I
I'm not
remember.
so sure now.
Yeah, I know. It's just the well, I don't want to give away too much about it, but
Sure.
it's the characters are not exactly warm and fuzzy.
True. True.
It's like the likability came up, and I don't usually try to let that sway me too much. So,
Sure.
a lot of movies with dislikable characters that I loved. Um, but
But
yeah,
I will say that I think Sean Penn did a fantastic job. I could definitely see him getting nominated because it was such a unique character.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, he was excellent, and everybody was really good, the acting wise in it. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what happens
Hmm.
at the Oscars. There'll definitely be nominations, but yeah.
Okay. So David, we are here to talk to you about you and your work, but also about your new book, How to Be a Rockstar Screenwriter. And as I said, David sent me the PDF, so he has the hard copy of the book. So David, I'm going to ask you to read the little about the author blurb on the back cover.
Uh, Cover it is, and I'll read it. So. Uh, this one is, what does it say? David Silverman counsels aspiring writers. He co-created 5 TV shows and wrote for Newhart, South Park, Dilbert, One Day at a Time, Alf, 9 to 5, and the Flintstones movie. And my wife, Regina, worked for the Whittier Daily News and the Los Angeles Times. She co-wrote and sold the pilot Bobcat, and we wrote a screenplay called Stepping Out, and we sold that together. And we live in Los Angeles, it says.
It says here. That's great. Okay, so David, let's talk a little bit about you and your background. As you just said in your bio, you've had an extensive career working for television and writing for films. So, how did you get your start? I mean, I always like to ask my guests, were you a voracious reader as a child? Did you just devour, film and TV, and then decided, hey, I want to give this a try and started writing scripts? I mean, how did you break in?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because I am a psychotherapist, and when I went to school, I got into really good, got into Stanford. They had a great psychology department, so I was all prepared to go straight into psychotherapy. But I'd say I took a writing class from a guy. The guy who wrote Presumed Innocent, he was a TA at Stanford, and he taught a writing class, and I wrote some things there, short stories, and I kind of found it interesting, and I really liked the film classes I took at Stanford too. So I kind of started going in that direction, which was, a complete surprise to my parents,
I can imagine.
pitching me as a psychiatrist or something like that. But yeah, so and I was really drawn to comedy, and then I applied to a USC film school, and I met another guy there. At USC. Everybody wants to be like Spielberg or George Lucas, and nobody wants to write comedy. So
Oh.
it just happened there was another guy there who did want to write TV comedy. So and we met, and his name was Steven Starsik, and so it didn't take long. We wrote a few, Spec Taxi, Spec Barney Miller at the time. Those were the good shows,
Hmm.
and we got into pitch Mork and Mindy and the Jeffersons, and things started taking off. Lucky for us,
Hmm.
pretty quickly.
Was I have to ask? It sounds like you were kind of like drawn towards writing comedy. Did you have any big influences? I guess like when you were growing up, or like at least for your sense of humor, like I loved the Marx Brothers, or Three Stooges, or I just loved Nichols and May, that sort of thing.
Yeah, definitely. I remember. Back when I was like in Boy Scouts, I memorized comedy routines off of the record albums that I was buying. There was the Bill Cosby at the time. I really liked him, which I kind of changed my feelings about him since that. And
Nothing else needs to be said about that.
But there was a radio show called Loman and Barkley back then, and it was kind of like an early one of these Howard Stern kind of funny guys on radio.
Hmm.
And so my brother and I listened to all the episodes, and they uh, they wanted viewers, listeners out there to come up with Loman and Barkley lemonade stand ideas, and so my brother and I we wrote and did a commercial for Loman and Barkley lemonade, and I was about 12 at the time. So, and these guys really liked it, and they had us on to come in down. Went to Hollywood to the studio, and we cut we had one on tape, and they did one professionally. It was a funny commercial, anyway. So that was my like brush with stardom as a kid.
Hmm.
And, there was no turning back after that.
Well, that's great. That is a fantastic story. So what I wanted to do is I'd like to ask the guest, like, so give us, you're familiar with screenwriting, so you know what the elevator pitch is, or so for other people, like the cocktail party pitch for how would you do that for how to be a rock star screenwriter?
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. So I try to distill, all the best advice that I had about breaking into the business, which it really is most of the book has to do with breaking in,
Hmm.
and then a good chunk of it has to do with how to keep writing, how to stay motivated, how to just it's very tough. That's one of the big challenges for writing
Hmm.
is to do it day after day if that's the way you do it. A lot of people sit down for at a certain time of day. Anyway, I kind of looked into how people do it, how the famous guys did it, that sort of thing. Found some interesting stories about Aaron Sorkin and uh, Stephen King. They're very candid about their early years when they using substances to stay up, and
I did think that was an interesting touch to
yeah,
add, and
very
and also we should also have the disclaimer not highly recommended to
yeah.
aspiring writers. At least don't tell anybody about it. So I have to ask, so like, what was the inspiration to write the book? I mean, was this just something you felt was bubbling around inside, or you just decided, you know what, there's so many how to make it as a screenwriter, like here's how to write a script, but also there's kind of like a follow-up question is that this really isn't about how to write a script. It's about almost like the entire world around writing it. Because you mentioned about, the motivation, but also about breaking in. And, these are things that, it's more of a, I have a script, now what do I do type of thing.
right. Yeah. How? So at some point, I started working with screenwriters as a therapist, and
Okay.
I was building a practice. And there's a huge website. It was called Psych Central or something like that, and like they reached hundreds of thousands of people. It was a huge deal, and I signed on to write a weekly column. It's called Hollywood Therapy.
Hmm.
So I wrote the weekly column, and I really had to produce, a blog every week. So I was writing about anything I could think of where I had some good advice, and I did some research. And anyway, I put out probably 80 of those chapters, and then I took like the 64 of them that seemed to fit, and they became the book, the basis of the book. My wife worked at the LA Times. She's an editor, so she helped me turn the blogs into chapters.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, I was going to say, so was that your intent when you started, just to like, okay, I have all of these advice, helpful hint kind of columns, uh, and you to put them all together into book form. Were there, I guess the best way to put it is, were there tips or pieces of advice that you wanted to make sure that were included? Because we'll get into this a little bit later, but like one of the things I thought was really great was about how to survive Hollywood. And that's not really something you hear a lot about because I just thought like a lot of them talk about, oh, here's how you reach out to agents and managers, and here's some ideas you could do to kind of get your foot in the door. But they really don't talk about once you're in, how to help yourself stay in.
Right, that's probably the most difficult part
Hmm.
because I found out in my research that people don't usually break in right away,
Hmm.
and some people said the average was like 7 or 8 screenplays before something clicked. Um, so I started to realize you need to be able to see the long picture here. You have to sit down and just and most people don't realize that. I think
Hmm.
most people they write a script and they think they're going to sell it right away, right?
Or they think or they think once I break in, I all I have to do is just sit back and write and like lounge by my swimming pool and not realizing, that's just the start of it. You're back on the treadmill.
Right. Yeah. Lawrence Kasdan once said that the thing about being a writer is like having homework the rest of your life. So
It's
that's that's one of the things. That's why I wrote a little bit about how to, what the mindset is that can help you sit down and write,
mhm.
regularly for long periods, years.
Yeah, because I was going to say that, like, because I paid particular attention to that section. It's actually at the end, near the end of the book, is how to survive Hollywood, and you have topics like a writer's personality, social anxiety, and surviving as a highly sensitive writer. And I'm thinking, this probably applies to so many more people than you realize, because I mean, I like to say that, writing is a solitary activity, but then you also have to go out and deal with other people. And for a lot of people, it's like, well, can't I just sit and write and let other people handle it? Not realizing that, you have to be as much of a salesman, or salesperson as your script is for you.
Right. Yeah. It's the thing about writing. It's like you said, it's a solitary kind of endeavor. Um, I was lucky I had writing partners, and that's one
Mm,
one of the reasons I sought them out. But still, the way we worked, we would break up the script. I would write the first act, he would write the second act. So you're basically chained to a computer for 8 hours a day, and that's very isolating. And the psychological, the baggage that comes with that, it can be daunting. So. Um, Yeah, I tried to think about how ways to think about it,
hmm
make it a little bit easier. That's why I came up with the idea of the Zen. There's a chapter in there on Zen and the art of writing, which
hmm
the notion that you have to sit down and knowing full well that you're probably not going to sell this script, but you have to write as if you're going to sell the script. It's
Yeah.
kind of a weird so you have to it's a Jedi mind trick. You have to command yourself. And then, and most people I talk to, like, I know a lot of people who've sold a script they wrote 20 years ago, finally, at some point. So, it's most people don't realize that the long view is crucial. And so, I recommend everybody start thinking that way as a writer.
hmm
There's a couple other things like writing three scripts a year, probably better than, slaving over one.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course, I was going to say one of the details I really appreciated, throughout the book of How to Be a Rockstar Screenwriter, is that it covers topics that you don't usually hear much about, and it talks about day jobs, because I think you talked about, Kasdan and Sorkin, like they talk about jobs they had while they were writing, before they really broke in. I thought that was great. Breaking in as an older writer, and so that is something really relevant. I mean, a friend of mine, Brad Johnson, he's organizing, I think, second year for doing this, called the Gray List for writers over 40.
Oh,
Just Google that. He's got a great setup there. Finding a mentor. I mean, that's not something you usually hear about. Just that, because a lot of writers just think that they're going to be on their own, not realizing, there are much more experienced writers who are, hopefully willing to, share their knowledge and, help guide them in the right direction.
right. Yeah, we were lucky that we had some really good mentors. And we found the best way to get them. It's like, because a lot of people are contacting people kind of
hmm
blue and trying to ask them, will you be my mentor? We took some writing classes from successful writers. This one guy, Lorenzo Music, created a couple of Mary Tyler Moore TV shows, Rhoda and Newhart, and another guy we took classes from wrote for All in the Family, and they were both really helpful to us in our career. Um, and that we found that was a good way to meet a mentor, because you don't have to like introduce yourself, and basically they're happy to see you. You've signed up for their class, you're paying them
hmm
anyway. So, and then it helps to be pretty good enough. Your writing quality, you want it to be good enough that they'll take you under their wing and see some.
hmm I think it also helps, because I've seen this a lot, with the newer writers that I've met, that a lot of them just are there to sell themselves. It's not really about establishing a professional relationship. It's more like, hi, you don't know me, but I really want you to help me. And it's kind of like, well, I'd like to say, at least buy me a drink first. Yeah, that
Right.
because
Yeah,
they forget that, a lot of the business is based on relationships, that I'm much more likely to help someone who's taken the time to get to know me rather than someone who just comes to me and says, "Hey, can you read my script?" Or, "Hey, you've got a manager. Can you forward my stuff to him?" It's like, well, I don't know who you are.
exactly. Yeah, it helps if you can. I guess it just helps if you're pretty good at making friends and that sort of
Mm,
thing. So you know how to do that where it's not just a one-sided deal, you know. I read a lot of people talking about their mentors, and some of them try to figure out something they can do to help the mentor.
mm,
What can I do? Some people they do some sort of like um, office kind of skills and things.
hmm
They can volunteer to help out some way. But yeah, that's a very tricky part of it. Hopefully, you have your personality is such, and writers don't always have outgoing, bubbly personality.
It can be a challenge for some of them. I'll give you that. I did want to ask though. So, I guess it was originally about writing the book, but since it is a compilation of all of these columns that you wrote, uh, how would you come up with the idea for a topic for a particular week? So, like, just as an example about, breaking in as an older writer, that what was the impetus for that? And did you talk to older writers about how they broke in, or, people who are relatively newer to the business, but they're on the older side? I mean, what
Right.
was the process for organizing that sort of thing?
Right. Well, I tried to look for, where is there a need for something? Because you don't see a lot of people writing about these, uh, the chapters, how to break in as an older writer, like what.
Hmm
And I break down the difference between TV and features because TV is such a in-person writing situation. You end up in a room full of writers, and which is great. But yeah, for an older writer who might not sort of fit in a room full of 30 somethings, it
hmm
could be a challenge. That's why features is a better way to go if you're like in your 60s or something like that. Because it doesn't really matter if it's a good script, they can shoot it. It doesn't matter what you look like or anything. So,
Sure.
but yeah, there's things like that, and uh, but it's also possible to create a TV show as an older writer.
hmm
TV, they tend to pair you up with a showrunner. So let's say they love your idea and your script, and they could actually do it that way. So there's exceptions to all these sort of rules, but the guideline is TV tougher for older writers.
Sure, sure.
I do
Uh,
recommend TV though. I do. That's where I cut my teeth and
mhm.
learned to write better. That's the great thing about TV shows is that you're kind of like in the best film school in the world. You're learning how to do it, and you're getting plenty of practice. And the showrunners are there to help you, you know, make sure you get it right. And so you learn a lot in your first few months on a TV show. You really
Mm. Oh,
learn to.
I can imagine. I did want to ask, like in your work as a therapist, you said you work with a lot of writers.
Yeah.
You don't have to divulge any specific information, but is there like a common issue that pops up with a lot of writers? I mean, do a lot of them suffer from imposter syndrome, or is it just more like just the stress of the job type of thing?
Yeah, yeah, a lot of it is the stress. Yeah,
Hmm
I had a guy who was on Saturday Night Live, and it's like uh, he had a lot of issues. I can't go into too much about
Sure.
it, tell you who it was or anything. But yeah, it usually involves a slump,
Mm.
trying to break out of a slump, and we talk about all the Jedi mind tricks that you can use and to try and get you to They're all in the book, by the way. All they came up.
How to be a rock star writer.
Um,
Actually, could you like just a couple of you said you have some tips and advice that you give to help get out of a slump. I mean, are there some that you find to be the most effective, or is it really more of a person by person basis?
yeah, I mean, I did a lot of research on those types of things that people use to motivate themselves. The one thing that I kind of liked a lot and that I used myself is has to do with the Pomodoro technique. Is that's there's a kitchen timer that looks like a tomato, and
Okay.
name Pomodoro Technique. There's a book out on it, and
Hmm.
you buy the timer or something. So one guy came up with this method where he would work, time himself, and like let's say I used to do like a 4 hour stretch, and during that period I had the timer, and I would write as if I had a deadline, as if
Mm.
I was on a TV show, and so I try not to allow myself to, play games and things. Um, so, and that's what the Pomodoro technique is. And the guy who invented it used it to get through university. Um, but so there's a psychological, again, a Jedi mind trick kind of occurs when you're doing that. That you write uh, faster and
Hmm.
yeah, I think better in a way because there's more urgency to the work. And then part of the Pomodoro technique is you also get like a shorter free period, so where you don't have to write at all. So you give yourself a really hard deadline. Say a lot of guys will just do an hour
Hmm.
and take 20 minutes or 10 minutes to do whatever they feel like after that. But that worked pretty well for me. I do a lot of like I'll write for 2, 3 hours and then take a break and watch some TV show, some comedy or Jeopardy or something.
Hmm.
Anyway, so that's technique. It's in the book also, and so that's one idea that I passed on to some of these guys that were in a slump and having trouble writing.
And did it did it pay off for them? Did they find, oh, it was a lot more effective than I expected, that sort of thing?
Yeah, there was a few cases where people really loved it. Yeah, and yeah, so many cases. I also do. So I read scripts and give pointers. Uh,
Hmm.
so at one point in my career, I worked for a studio, and I get to pick up a screenplay or a novel every day and read it and do the coverage on it.
Okay.
So that was it helped me a lot in like later on as a showrunner, breaking stories and working on everybody's outlines with them and trying to get the best stories together. That experience that you get in, they call it a story editor job.
Hmm.
Really, that's what that's when you talk about day jobs. That's
Hmm.
one of the best day jobs that I had to prepare me for writing.
Yeah, I was going to say we probably should have specified like that category in the book about day jobs. It's not just like what you're doing when you're not writing, but it's a lot of them are writing adjacent. So as you said, story editor or working in some capacity within the industry as a writer. And so one of the things I also wanted to ask you about is so that, as you said, you've got a lot of experience writing for TV. And so, but really has changed, especially over the past 15, 20 years. We have, streaming is so prevalent and we have more web series and now there's vertical content, which is a new thing that's coming in. So
I
it sounds like being able to adapt to this sort of thing. But I mean, even though the presentation is different, but it's still they're generating the material for all of this, for shows that are streaming or web series and such. And that, what are ways that you would suggest for writers to be able to adapt, or is it really just more about be able to write something and have it work in that particular form or presentation?
Yeah, yeah. I think that's because it is interesting the different things you could get into, and you have to be open. That's a
Mm.
huge thing. Is there's a chapter on get your foot in the door. I think I call it is yeah. If you see some job, like even if it was like a story editor job or uh, a job that is a little different from what your main goal is. Let's say you want to write. You know, uh, Oscar-worthy screenplays. But if you find a job writing cartoons, I recommend especially if that's the best job you're up for, I
Hmm.
recommend it. I've done that myself. I used to work on animation projects and things like that, especially during strikes. I found that there's a different union, animation union,
Hmm.
and so when the WGA was striking, we could take those animation jobs, and that was a kind of a lifesaver. But yeah, any of those jobs is good training, good experience, and it's great, good work habits. And it wouldn't be the end of the world if you ended up in animation, right? It'd
Right, right.
be a really good career.
And
So.
I would also imagine that, as you said, being able to adapt and just being able to work on all these different capacities, that it also shows how versatile you can be as a writer. So, if you hear about someone's looking for, we're looking for someone who can do like a period piece. They're like, oh, I've worked on, I worked on this show that was set in the Old West or this show that was set in the 40s, as opposed to someone who's like, well, I only do horror and that's all I'm going to write. So,
Yeah, that's the other thing. Well, horror's not a bad
mm.
idea because they're less expensive to make and you don't need a big star. So it's easier to sell those. So I do recommend low budget horror. There's a chapter in the book about what your best bet is.
Hmm.
And the idea of getting your foot in the door just means like let's say that's the first thing you sell is a low budget horror. You're not stuck there if you
Mm.
feel like you want to try other things. But it'll, for example, it might get you an agent, and that could lead to other things. So, a lot of people kind of think in black and white terms, like, oh, I'll be doing this for the rest of my life. I'll be doing the cartoons for the rest of my life, or low budget horror for the rest of my life. It's not necessarily true. So, it's good to be open and have lots of different ways to go and be an opportunist. That's really the key.
Oh, okay. I like that. As you did mention about writing for animation, that I know from your background that one of the shows you co-created was the Wild Thornberrys
Right, right.
from Nickelodeon, and I was a big fan. I enjoyed that back in the day. If you could describe like how that show came to be, you don't have to go into super detail unless you feel
Okay.
compelled to. And so, how is it all put together? I guess from the writing perspective.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, it started like as something completely different. My two writing partners, both Steve and me, I feel like it's like my brother Daryl and my other brother Daryl or something.
Sure, sure.
It's anyway, we got after like we ran a show together called the Jackie Thomas Show with Tom Arnold and Roseanne was on it and Roseanne was one of the exec producers. Anyway, it was well received even though it only lasted a year. And we were offered a development deal at Fox. So that meant we every day we went in and we got paid to come up with new series ideas. So we created three series and got three shows on the air, and one of them was Wild Thornberry. So somebody at Fox, one of the suits we call them, the guys who are in charge there. He brought us a video, I think it was a British, of animals talking at the zoo and talking to each other, and it was very clever and funny. And he said, "Well, this is we want you to come up with an idea for a TV show based on this." And at that point, it would be a sitcom. So anyway, we tossed those ideas around and we came up with the Wild Thornberry's idea, which was very different from what they suggested, but wasn't too different. So I guess they felt like we followed their notes. And the basic idea of the Thornberrys, see if I can remember, is a family travels all over the world. They do a wildlife TV show together, and one of the kids, Liza, has the ability to talk to animals. So they get a lot of stories involving the animals. Anyway, I think that's a pretty good summary of it. So. So we did. So they liked the idea, and we wrote a sitcom based on that, like an adult sitcom that was going to go after the Simpsons or something like that. And so we did write the pilot. So it's interesting to see how things change.
Hmm.
That pilot was around, and at the same time, King of the Hill was being developed at Fox for the same time slot. We didn't realize we were up against that, and um, so here's how that changed. We found out that like a year went by, and we were still in development. We had the development deal for 3 years. It was really that's like the top job you can have
Hmm.
in show business. Anyway, um, so yeah, we found out, oh, King of the Hill's going to take that slot. Sorry. So it's like back to the drawing board. But we developed it with an animation house, the one at some point they did The Simpsons, Klasky Chupo.
Mm.
Very talented, really great artwork. The artwork on The Simpsons um, and Wild Thornberrys and Rugrats and Real Monsters, and a bunch of other shows. Really creative guys. They're Hungarian, those people. They're really so I'm very, and they were really fun to work with and generous. And so they decided they didn't want to give up on the Wild Thornberrys, so they kicked it around in house, and they thought of a kids show that could be done.
Mm.
At some point, they come back to us and say, we decided to use your show, and it's now a kids show.
Mm.
So, and that's how it ended up. And in the meantime, there were like different changes. So the father on the show is British and has this crazy British accent. And at one point, the suits all decided, well, America's not going to like a British father on a show like this. Could you come up with a different slant on it? So we worked on a different version of it where the dad was an American, uh, kind of red-haired, long-haired American character named Woody. I just remember that much. And but that didn't click
Hmm.
for whatever reason. It was much funnier with the eccentric British father. Anyway, so those are all the permutations and the craziness that happened around that show.
So how was it? So you had your two co-creators. How many of the initial scripts did all of you work on, or did you bring in like a writer's room and just farmed it out, or were you actively involved in the writing, or were you more of a showrunner slash supervisor role?
Yeah, that we didn't actually. So we kind of our agents wanted to keep us in half-hour sitcoms because the money is much better.
Hmm.
So we didn't actually work on that. I had friends who worked on the production, and I had one of my friends was a showrunner on it, and they did 8 years worth of episodes, and their 3 movies came out of it.
Wow. And I had to think about it for a second, but it was Tim Curry who was the voice of the father, if I
Yeah,
remember correctly.
right. Yeah, yeah, and he was so great. The cast was excellent. Flea was in the cast from Chili Peppers. Also, he played this kid who didn't speak any English.
Oh, he was like a Tarzan type kid who's adopted by the family or something like that.
He was raised by wolves or something.
Okay, I do remember that as well. Were you part of the recording process, or was that just like someone part of the staff?
We did go to a bunch of the recording sessions, and I worked on lots of animated shows, including Dilbert and
Hmm.
um, Shaolin Showdown was another one, and so we got a lot of experience, uh, basically working with voice actors who
Hmm.
are amazing people, and most of those guys can do like 10, 20 voices, and they're very talented guys.
They are, yeah. The voice people are very, very key. So, David, as we start to wrap things up, I mean, we've been talking about all of the great advice and guidance that your book, "How to Be a Rockstar Screenwriter," uh, takes into account. I mean, are there a couple of like key pieces of advice that you think every writer should keep in mind? I mean, you were talking about breaking in and getting your foot in the door. I mean, if say if fresh-eyed kid, fresh out of school, comes up and says, "Mr. Silverman, like point me in the right direction." Like, is there like something you like to tell every writer, or some kind of like a rule of thumb or a piece of advice you like to give out?
Yeah, well, yeah, there's a lot of advice in the book, of course,
Of
uh,
course.
but yeah, I think the main thing is um, like the notion of adopting the long view
Hmm.
on approaching it that way. So it's very easy to get disillusioned because on short term, you get lots of no's, and
Yeah.
all the greats get we all got those things. So I try to get people to look at the long term and try to focus on the habits. Make sure you're doing something. It doesn't have to be every day, but regular writing, um, and try to maybe do 3 projects a year instead of one. Those ideas, um, but uh, yeah, it's a tough business. I do recommend having writing partners if possible,
Hmm.
because it can be tough, and so it just helps to have a buddy to get through it with, and that's good advice.
Yeah, I do want to add to that real quick. Not if you can't get a writing partner, like at least try to make some connections within the writing community, so you have friends who are also writers, so that you can rely on them for honest feedback, and rather tthan someone's like, "Oh, it's great, I don't change a thing."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, there's a whole chapter in there on
Hmm.
how to get better as a writer. And there is a process, and it doesn't work unless you have qualified people reading your material and telling you how to make it better. That is like one of the number one things. And uh, so there's guys like Eric Bork, uh,
Hmm.
and um, I used to do it. I read scripts and give advice. But there's companies out there that do it. I'm not sure who the best companies are. Do you have any ideas on that?
I was going to say there is a lot of screenwriting consultants out there. It's really just kind of like do your homework, do your due diligence about researching. Excuse me, like who's got the experience, rather than just someone like, hey, I made a short film once. I can, if you give me X amount of dollars, I can tell you what's wrong with your script.
Yeah, that's another thing to be aware of. There is a lot of bad advice out there also.
Hmm.
So like you said, do your research. Um, Lately, there's Greenlight is a company that uses AI to give feedback.
Hmm.
My experience with that is limited. I don't know if
Yeah.
really that good.
I was going to say mine has not been that great with the
Oh,
AI, with AI feedback at least. It's nothing to do with green light. But as David said, like there are some key pieces of advice. You can find them all throughout his new book, How to Be a Rockstar Screenwriter, or at least Pay the Bills. David, this has been phenomenal talking about this with you. Where can people find out more about you, and where can they get a copy of the book?
right. The book is on Amazon. Off of
There we go again. How to Be a Rockstar Screenwriter.
And yeah, so it's available in paperback, which it's easier.
Hmm.
It's also available in digital, yeah, if you just want to do it that way. But and I have a website called HollywoodScriptWriting.com. So script writing, not screenwriting. And if you're looking for a therapist, I have a website called DavidSilvermanLMFT.com, which is LMFT is a licensed family therapist. So.
Okay, and we will put and both links will be put on both the audio and the video presentation of today's show. David, once again, thank you so much for being here. This was great stuff.
Okay, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Okay, great. And viewers and listeners, if you enjoyed today's show, please hit like and feel free to leave a comment and subscribe. You can check out my social media, my screenwriting blog, MaximumZ.blog. There's a Q&A I did with David from a couple of years ago. Just go to the search engine, type in David Silverman. It'll pop up right away. For my Twitter, at Maximum_Z, and Blue Sky and Instagram, it's at Pez Screenwriting. And this show has its own social media accounts as well, at Podcast CWL for both Twitter and for Blue Sky. And I've got books on Amazon too, the Go Ahead and Ask books, the ones about screenwriting and pie. Like I said, that's David. I'm Paul. This has been the Creative Writing Life podcast. Thanks for listening. Stay safe, stay healthy, and most importantly, go write something.